مرحبا وأهلا
Welcome
بكم
everyone. It is
جميعا
very nice
في
to see
يمن
everyone
ميديا
here.
كول.
Welcome to
بالنسبة
this
لي من يمن ميديا كول
Yemen Media
ملتقي في
Call.
هذه
On
المرة
this Yemen
مع
Media
السيد
Call,
شاو
we are honored
جين
to have
القائم
Mr. Shao
بالأعمال
Zheng, the
لسفارة
acting
جمهورية الصين الشعبية إلى اليمن،
charge d'affaires of the
السفير
Embassy of
تشاو
the
نشر
People's Republic
دبلوماسي
of
صيني
China to
نشط،
Yemen. He is a very
فنرحب
active
بشكل
Chinese
واضح
diplomat. We have
بالكثير
seen him
من
become much
الأنشطة
more active
عكس
in various
العادة التي
activities.
توصى بالهدوء
Unlike, I think,
الدبلوماسي،
what
يجد
usually
السيد
is
تشاو
a much
أكثر
more
حيوية،
quiet
لهجة
Chinese
تحتك
diplomacy
بالكثير
in
من
Yemen.
الأطراف
He
السياسية
has met
اليمنية
with
مع
many of the
انخفاض
Yemeni political
العصبية.
actors, with
هذا
activists, with journalists, and
يثير
has
عادة
become very
الكثير من
involved in
الأسئلة
the Yemeni
خصوصا من
file.
الأدوار
This
الصينية
has led
النشطة
to many
حقيقة
questions,
في
especially with the very
المنطقة في
active
اليمن
role of
مثل
China in the
تدمير مقر
region
أكفاين في مركز
and
صنعاء
in Yemen
بسبب
and many other
استخدام
places. And so
السفير
we're very
تشاو
honored to have Your Excellency with us today
والحديث إليه.
and to have this discussion with you.
التجربة بالنسبة لنا
I think
كانت
this
ملهمة
is a
وفرصة
very
مهمة.
important experience and
فقط
opportunity for
للتأكيد
us. And just to
للأعزاء
reiterate to
الحاضرين
our
أود
dear
أن
participants in the
ننتقل
audience,
أولا إلى الإنجليزية
interpretation is
and
available in
if you
both
want
English and
any
Arabic. If
English
anyone needs
translation
it,
you can
you
access
can
that.
activate the language interpretation
الجلسة
feature to
أيضا
do so.
مسجلة
The session is also going to be recorded
وتبث لايف
as well as
على قناتنا في
broadcast
اليوتيوب،
live on our
ويمكن
channel on
لاحقا أن
YouTube.
نشرها على كل
And
وسائل
later on, we
التواصل
could
الاجتماعي
also
التابعة
publish it
لنا.
on other platforms.
أيضا يمكن وضع الأسئلة
You can pose any
في
questions you
صندوق
might have in the
Q&A.
Q&A box that
لاحقا
will be
سأبدأ
available. This can
بتلقي
be
مجموعة من
started at a
الأسئلة
later
بمساعدة
time.
السفير
We will start with a discussion between
بصورة
myself
أساسية،
and His
لكن قبل أن نبدأ
Excellency. But
بالأسئلة
before we start
أستأذن
with any
من
questions, I would like to ask His
المتفضل
Excellency the
بالحديث
Ambassador
من خلال
to
هذا
open up the
الفيروس
session with some opening remarks.
المنظمة الصحفية الأونلاين.
Thank you
تفضل.
very much, Your Excellency. Over to
Hello, everyone. It's my great pleasure to be invited to speak to the Sana Center. I had the honor to participate in one of your sessions via video in The Hague last year, and I very much enjoy the deliberations and exchanges with you. And I believe that this session today will help us understand each other's positions and contribute to our mutual understanding. As for the main topics of today, I would like to talk about China's relations with Yemen, the current situation, peace process, the Red Sea, what's happening in Palestine, as well as the region. As for China's relations with Yemen, I often meet a lot of friends. They said that China-Yemen friendship is higher than the Mount Everest and deeper than the Red Sea. And I wish that we can do whatever we can to help the peace process in Yemen and to promote the economic reconstruction in Yemen. As for the Red Sea issue, China is a major shipping country, and we have been doing our utmost to protect the safety and safe passage in the Red Sea. And we call for the immediate stop of any attacks in the Red Sea. As for China's diplomacy, we have been advocating an independent foreign policy of peace. And not long ago, we celebrated the 70th anniversary of China's 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. And we are ready to work with the international community to provide more global development assistance, to promote the Belt and Road Initiative, and to promote world peace and stability. For the regional hotspots, probably you have noticed that every international media today, there's the big picture of the Palestinians reaching the agreements in China, and we are doing our utmost to promote peace and stability in the Middle East and to promote the peace process in Gaza and elsewhere. As for China's development, now China has become the second largest economy in the world, and we will pursue our economic development and open up policy. And we are ready to work with the Sana Center and our friends in the media circle to answer your questions and to further promote peace and friendship in the region. Thank you so much.
شكرا.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for this very promising and very optimistic introduction, because this will take us or leads us directly into one of the most important developments. If you'll allow me, China has achieved a monumental progress in agreement between the Palestinian actors for the discussions about what happens next. But with regards to Yemen, there was a very significant development with a drone attack from Yemen targeting Tel Aviv, after which Israel responded with a strike on Hodeidah port. What is China's perspective on this development, which threatens to expand the regional conflict and might lead to Israel becoming directly involved in the conflict in Yemen?
We are closely following the situation in Yemen and elsewhere in the region, and we, at the Security Council's debate on Yemen yesterday, expressed our positions on the Red Sea issue as well as the attacks which happened over the weekend. We call for the political settlement of the Yemeni issue, and we believe that the Yemeni-led and Yemeni-owned political process is essential, and every party should work to resolve their differences and to avoid tensions from further escalation. And we support the good work of Hans and his colleagues, and we welcome the agreements reached the day before yesterday between the Houthis and the Yemeni government concerning the central bank and the aviation airlines. At the moment, the situation in the Red Sea is worrying, and we call for the various parties to exercise maximum restraint and to stop any attacks on the commercial ships. And we believe that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Yemen and other countries along the Red Sea should be protected. As for the humanitarian situation in Yemen, we believe that it needs further assistance from the international community, and we call from the UN and other international organizations to provide more humanitarian and development assistance to Yemen. And we believe that the current crisis should not be let to go on forever, and the international community should work together to bring an end to the 9-year-long war. And we are looking forward to more peace and development in the Middle East.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I wanted to know what was your comment specifically on this Israeli strike on Hodeidah? Do you think that this was a significant step in escalation? Could it change the tempo of this conflict, not just in Yemen, but in the region?
Of course, we noticed the live pictures of the attacks on the Hodeidah, and we called for any stop of any escalations of tensions in Yemen, especially any attacks on the humanitarian facilities and the ports, oil facilities, etc., because it's having major impact in the livelihoods and causing casualties. And we at the United Nations at various forums has been calling for the stop of any further escalations and ask for the various parties to exercise restraint.
Thank you very much. I think the question then is, can we build upon this? Can we build upon this growing Chinese role in mediation? Can China, for example, play a role of mediation between the Houthis and the other actors, especially when it comes to the issues in the Red Sea? Just like China was able to achieve the important agreement between Saudi Arabia and Tehran, or between the various Palestinian actors, does China think about playing a mediating role, especially just like you've said, it has an active relationship with all of the actors, including the Houthis?
Actually, what we are doing is at 3 fronts. One is at the UN Security Council. We have been promoting peace for Yemen over the years. And secondly, at the regional level, we have been promoting the reconciliation between Iran and Saudi during China's mediation. We have been persuading the two sides to restore their diplomatic relations, thus creating a good external atmosphere for the solution of the Yemen issue. And thirdly, we have been in contact with the various parties in Yemen, persuading them to come back to the negotiation tables and to work for peace and for the general interest of the Yemeni public. And we have been reaching out to the various parties, and we will continue to do so and hope that peace will come back to Yemen at an early stage.
حقيقة طب خليني
Thank you very much. Let us step forward to another track. Most people say that any mediation role that China plays might lead to some suspicions, because many of the arms components, especially the drone components, are coming from industrial manufacturing in China through intermediaries, of course. But are there, for example, end user agreements? Is there any supervision of these kinds of components? And what are China's concerns about these components? And what information could you share with us?
China exercises strict control on the exports of sensitive materials and dual-use materials, especially the export of drone products. We have been very strict with this. So far, we have noticed that some countries, the United States in particular, has gone to sanction some of the Chinese entities and individuals. We are strongly against such unilateral sanctions without the authorization of the United Nations Security Council. And we believe that it's a long-arm jurisdiction, and we are in opposition of such kind of unilateral sanctions. As I mentioned, we will, as always, exercise strict control on the exports of those sensitive materials.
Yes, of course, but there are some reports, even reports by Security Council experts, that mentioned this. Were there measures taken, for example, to try to curb this issue specifically?
Of course, China has issued resolutions and regulations on the control of exports of sensitive materials, especially the drones. Probably you have noticed that the statements China made in this regard, and we will, as always, to exercise maximum restraint and to exercise the restrictions on the exports of such materials to the sensitive areas.
Thank you very much. If we could go back to the topic of Chinese diplomacy and the role that it played between Tehran and Riyadh, especially the impact that it had. It helped improve the relationship between the two states, and we saw an impact that this had a direct impact on Yemen up until the Houthi attack started on the Red Sea and the Gaza war started. There's now news of a joint or mutual defense pact between the United States and Saudi Arabia, that this is currently being discussed. Will this impact the agreement between Tehran and Riyadh, at least from your perspective or China's perspective? And will it have an impact on the Chinese-sponsored agreement? And what impact do you think it will have on the dynamics of the region if Riyadh and Washington sign this defense agreement?
We have been working very actively for peace and stability in the Middle East, and we issued the Global Security Initiative 2 years ago, under which a special paragraph was devoted to promoting peace, reconciliation in the Middle East. Under the Chinese initiative, we have been able to persuade Saudis and Iran to come together to Beijing and reach the historical agreements on the restoration of their diplomatic relations. And also, thanks to China's efforts, the various fractions of the Palestinians came over to Beijing over last weekend, and they reached a historical agreement among the 14 different parties to come together as a unity in safeguarding the rights of interest of the Palestinians. As for the relations between China and Arab countries, including Saudis, it has been a very sound footing since we have the China-Arab summit 2 years ago. All around relations have been developed between China, Saudi, and other 22 Arab countries. As for China's relations with the United States, we always advocated that it should be on a basis of mutual respect, and we are ready to peaceful coexistence with the United States, because United States is the largest developed country and China is the largest developing country. We have every reason to have good relations among the two big powers. As for the relations between Saudi and Americans, and I think this are for these two countries to decide what kind of relations they want to develop. On the Chinese, our principle is that for the countries among the world, we advocated that the peaceful coexistence 5 principles should be basis for the development of relations among the different countries. And we have had a commemoration of the 70th anniversary of the 5 principles, and we are ready to develop relations with other countries on the basis of that.
لكن أنت لا تعتقد إنه هذا
But you don't think that this potential agreement will affect the agreement that China was able to achieve between Tehran and Saudi Arabia? So this potential agreement between Saudi Arabia and the US, will it have an impact on the agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia?
I think the agreement you are talking about is still being discussed, and we don't see what are the details in the content. But as a whole, we believe that China's relations with other countries should be win-win. And for the international community, it's also the same, that we should advocate for win-win, not zero-sum. One's gain is not another's sum, is not another's loss. Some people say that China is trying to fill in the vacuum in the Middle East left by the United States or other countries. As a matter of fact, China's relations with Arab countries dates back to more than 1,000 years ago, well before the United States was even established. And we have very good relations in trade, the ancient Silk Road, the ancient Spice Road, etc. And we believe that our good relations with Saudis, with the other Arab countries, with Yemen, etc., are in our mutual interest and common interest. At the moment, China is the largest trading partner of almost all the Arab countries, and we are ready to develop good relations in the future. As for their external relations with other countries, we believe that so long as it serves their national interest, serve peace and stability in the region, we have no objection. But overall speaking, China advocated for the global development initiative, the global civilization initiative, and the global peace initiative. And we advocated for peace and stability in the region.
طبعا دعني أعود إلى
Thank you. Going back to the interactions or the engagement between China and Yemen. China has a naval base in Djibouti overlooking Bab el-Mandeb Strait. And I think this is one of the few or rare examples of a Chinese military base abroad. And this shows that this is a very strategic location. There's also talk of Chinese investment in Africa. And so Yemen is located near all of these areas that are of interest to China. And so from the Chinese perspective and in Chinese interests and strategic interests, where does Yemen lie? Is Yemen, for example, part of that initiative, the Belt and Road Initiative? And how will these developments, these geopolitical developments, affect China's perspective of where Yemen lies in all of this?
China and Yemen have long history of interactions and friendship between us, dating back more than 1,000 years ago. And for the diplomatic relations, this year we mark the 68th anniversary of diplomatic relations, and we have supported each other in bilateral issues, international construction, as well as in international security and peace, stability, etc. And Yemen is an important friend, partner, and brother of China. So we enjoy very good relations. Not long ago, the foreign minister of Yemen visited China, during which we signed a new economic cooperation agreement, under which China provided additional 50 million RMB yuan of fund assistance to Yemen. And we are ready to further provide assistance to Yemen within our capabilities. As for the Djibouti thing you mentioned, it's true that China has some Chinese naval presence in Djibouti and the Gulf of Aden since 2008. They have been there under the auspices and mandate of the United Nations in fighting Somali pirates. During the past 15 years, they have provided the protection for Chinese ships and foreign ships, totaling more than 7,000, and they are a force for peace in the Gulf of Aden.
Have Chinese vessels been affected or involved by the attacks by the Houthis?
Actually, since the very start of the attacks in the Red Sea, we have called for the stop of any attacks on commercial vessels, and we have been working on various parties to persuade them to stop any attacks. So far, I think the vast majority of Chinese vessels are safe. Some of them go through the Cape of Good Hope instead of the Red Sea, and we have been issuing alerts to the captains of the Chinese ships. Of course, there are one or two incidents during which Chinese ships were mistaken as other countries' ships and came under attack. And since that, we have been launching our representations with the various sides and to urge them to stop the attacks on the ships. And we believe that the safety and security of the international supply lane is very important, and we call for the various parties to protect and honor the rights of the commercial ships to cross the Red Sea.
دعني أسألك حقيقة
Thank you
عن
very much, Your Excellency. I wanted to ask you about the Chinese mediation between Iran and Saudi Arabia. Was any part of it related to Yemen, or is it just directly between Tehran and Saudi Arabia? Was there any part of this agreement that mentioned Yemen or provided guarantees, for example, for Saudi Arabia of not being attacked? So are we as Yemenis a part of that in any way? Is there anything you could tell us about that, if you will?
I believe that everybody knows pretty well that China has been working very hard to bring the Saudis and the Iranians together. And after two talks in China, they finally signed the agreement on the restoration of diplomatic ties with each other. I believe that this is a victory for diplomacy, it's a victory for peace. And we very much hope that this good momentum can be kept. And since the signing of the agreement, we are delighted to see that the two countries sent their ambassadors, reopened their embassies in each other's capital. And we very much hope that this will have important bearings and create good atmosphere for the Yemeni peace process.
دعني أسألك
Thank you. If I could ask you about
ما هو تعليقك على سبيل المثال
what comments might you have, for example, on the fact that
sorry أيوة sorry
Sorry, I muted myself. I wanted to ask you The Yemeni embassy in Tehran, for example, was handed over by the Iranians to the Houthis and not the internationally recognized government. And this was a very noticeable development. Did you have any comments on this, on behaviors such as this? Diplomatically, do you think that that things could be done in this way? Or what is China's approach, especially with its vital relationship with Sana'a and with Tehran on this issue?
As I explained that we very much hope that the Yemen peace process will come to fruition and to yield results at an early date after nearly 9 years of wars. And we believe that the various parties, the best way for them to sit down at the negotiation tables and to talk for the roadmap and how to proceed and to solve their problems. Over the past few days, we are delighted that the Houthis and the Yemeni government finally resolved their differences on the central bank, the new banknotes, as well as the Yemen Air issue. And we hope that this momentum can be kept so that the differences can be ironed out and the Yemeni people can live in peace and prosperity once again. As for China's relations with Iran, we have relations with Iran for many, many years. And recently, probably you noticed that Iranians has also joined the Shanghai Cooperation Organizations and other international organizations. And we are ready to develop good relations with all the countries in the region, the Arab countries, the Iranians, and we hope that the countries in the region can live in peace and harmony with each other.
أذكر فقط
I
المشاركين.
would just like to remind the participants that you can ask any questions you might have. You can pose your questions in the Q&A box. And I would also like to,
وأعود حقيقة.
and going back to my discussion with His Excellency, I have a simple question. After almost 10 years of war, do you think that UNSC Resolution 2216, is it still applicable? Is it still suitable? And what is China's position on this resolution? What is your perspective to this Security Council Foundation in dealing with the conflict in Yemen?
As I mentioned that the Yemen issue is still one of the hotspot issues under discussion at the UN Security Council. I followed very closely the discussions yesterday at the Security Council, and various sides expressed their support to the agreements reached between the reached between the Houthis and the Yemeni government the day before. As for China, we support the peace process in Yemen as well as the relevant UN resolutions, and we also strongly support the good offices and work by Hans Grunberg and his office. And we call on the various parties to come to the negotiation tables at an early date. As good friend of Yemen, we always advocated for peace and stability and speak for Yemen at the Security Council. And we will, as always, stand with the Yemeni legitimate government and support the work of the PLC and its chairman, Alimi.
طب مرة أخرى إذا
Thank you very much. Once again, I would like to remind the participants, if you have any questions, any comments, you can ask them using the chat, or you can raise your hand. We will start opening the floor for questions in 5 minutes. Going back to His Excellency, there was a high-level delegation from the Islah, or the Yemeni Congregation for Reform. This was a very important visit, especially the nature of the delegation and its size. What is the relationship between the Islah Party and China?
We have exchanges among the various parties of Yemen with China. Over the past few years, quite a few political delegations has been sent to Yemen, to China for mutual learning, understanding, as well as exchanges. Not long ago, the Reform Coalition, they sent a delegation headed by its Secretary General to participate in China's commemoration activities of the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence. They also had the opportunity to visit Beijing, Guizhou, as well as Shenzhen and some other cities in China. I met with them before they left and also after they came back to Riyadh, and they are very much impressed by the China's development over the years, and they are ready to further promote the party-to-party exchanges and cooperation between the two sides. And as for the Chinese side, we are happy to reach out to the various sides and various parties in Yemen so that we can learn from each other on how to govern the country, how to rebuild the countries, and to achieve modernization at an early date.
رأينا الإصلاح.
We saw the Islah party. There was also other delegations. Have the Houthis ever sent a delegation? Have there been discussions? We saw that they had visits to Moscow, but have they visited Beijing?
Probably you know that some years ago, the Houthis, they actually visited China. That is around the year 2016 and around that time. And we have been in contact with the various parties in Yemen, including the Houthis.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your answers, for your discussion. And now I would like to open the floor for any questions from our participants. I also have some additional questions, but I wanted to give the audience a chance. If anyone has any questions, you can do so through the Q&A box, or you can also raise your hand. We have a question from Sophia. Sophia, please go ahead with your question. But if you could please introduce yourself, your name, and the entity you work with.
Yes. Hi, Mr. Zheng. Thank you for your time. My name is Sophia Yan, and I work for the Daily Telegraph. I have 2 questions. The first is if you could expand on the nature of the contact that China has now with the Houthis. And my second question is if you could explain what sort of impact the shipping situation in the Red Sea has had on the Chinese economy. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. For the Red Sea, as I mentioned, that China is okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
For the Red Sea issue, as you know, that China is now the world's largest shipping country, and annually we exported a lot of commodities, including the Christmas gifts through the Red Sea to European countries, Africa, and other places in the world. So we care quite a lot about the safety and the smoothness of the shipping lines along the Red Sea. We have been working on various parties to ensure the safety, and we urge the various parties to exercise maximum restraint as well as to respect the sovereignty of the Yemen as well as other countries along the Red Sea. And since the start of the attacks in the Red Sea, many of the Chinese shipping companies have shifted to the route of the Cape of Good Hope, which has increased the time as well as the freight for these companies. We very much hope that the Red Sea will come to be calm again so that the ships can go across it and to enjoy the safety and smoothness as it had in the past. As to your first question, we have been in contact with the various sides of Yemen, including the Houthis, and we have been urging them to stop the attacks on the Red Sea, and we have been in touch with them. And as for the all these has been in the past, in the past, we have been in contact with them, and we will do it in the future as well. As for the Yemen peace process, we very much urge the various parties to come back to the negotiation tables, and we very much hope to see the restoration of the roadmap as well as the enjoying of the peace and stability by the Yemeni people at an early date. Thank you.
لدي عدد من
I had
الأسئلة.
several other questions. I saw some questions also in the Q&A. Let's start with two core. There were several questions, but there was a question on. There's a question from Ghaida Rashidi, and she asks, is there any Chinese interest in Yemeni ports, especially since Aden port was there was some contentious issues because before the war it was under the control of the UAE, and then there was an agreement with China. And so are these Chinese interests still there? And I also wanted to add two additional questions from Mustafa Naji, who is a Yemeni researcher, and he posed several questions. He was asking, why has China continued with its? Why has it not appointed an official ambassador? Is this an issue of of trying to find a balance between the government and the Houthis? And I also had a question of where does Yemen stand in China's more strategic economic initiatives and projects? And the final question that they had is there has been talk of Chinese investments in the field of mining and petroleum in areas under Houthi control, and there was an agreement that was signed at the time between the Chinese petroleum company. What is the truth of this matter, and what did it lead to? Over to you, Excellency.
I had a lot of questions. I just want to make it short. First, China has been doing a lot of building and national reconstruction projects in Yemen before the war broke out. We actually have about 100 different projects, either roads, bridges, hospitals, or schools, etc. The most famous, of course, is the road linking Sana'a and Hodeidah, which was built around 1958, and it was finished within 3 years. And it was one of the first major highways linking the different parts of Yemen. And I recently visited Aden and Hadramaut, during which I visited the China Hospital in Aden and also visited the China Bridge in Mukalla. All these are symbols of friendship and cooperation between the two peoples. And in the future, we will, within our capabilities, to support the national reconstruction in Yemen. We will do whatever we can to help them. For instance, recently we provided 1,000 boxes of medical equipments to Yemen, including 10 ambulances, hospital beds, ventilation machines, etc. And we are in the process of providing more humanitarian assistance as well. As for the ports, facilities, we have been also providing a lot of assistance to Yemen before the war broke out, and we very much hope that peace will come back to Yemen. China has the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, which has benefited 150 countries. Yemen signed the MOU with China in 2019, and we very much hope that Yemen will benefit from joining the BRI because we have been building a lot of infrastructure projects for many developing countries, like in Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America, etc. And we believe that Yemen will benefit from these kind of development projects. As for the petroleum agreements which were mentioned, I think it is actually a private Chinese petroleum company which were cheated into signing so-called agreements by some illegal agents. As soon as they discover that they were cheated, they issued a statement and they said that it's not their real intention and abolished that agreements. So that's the true nature of that so-called agreements. As for the BRI project, we are looking forward to having more exchanges and cooperation with Yemen. And as I mentioned earlier, we have economic and cooperation projects and agreements with Yemen. As for the projects specific under these agreements, it will be discussed between the Chinese and the Yemeni governments. As for the decision of ambassadors or Chargé d'affaires, I think is the decision from the capital, of course. And on my side, I will do my very utmost together with my colleagues to promote the good friendly relations and cooperation between our two great nations.
شكرا لك سعادة السفير.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I would like to remind everyone who had any questions, if you could please raise your hand, and if you could also introduce yourself. I would like to start with Khaldun Bakhail, and then we will hear from Mohammed Al-Qadi. Over to you, Khaldun. Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the Sana'a Center for organizing this very important, and I would also like to thank my friend, His Excellency Shao Zheng, for participating and for giving us his time. I think there are some very positive winds coming in from the east, from the China. I think that I share this sense with everyone. I'm sorry, Khaldun, if you could please introduce yourself. I'm Khaldun Bakhail from the Hadramaut Governorate. My question to Your Excellency, in light of all of the complications facing the implementation of the roadmap, especially the financial and economic issues, especially with US sanctions, can Chinese banks play a role in this and help us overcome this hurdle in the negotiations? Thank you. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. If we could take 2 additional questions in this round and then come back to you for answers. Mohammed Al-Qadi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mohammed Al-Qadi. My question to Your Excellency is with regards, many see that the Chinese position with regards to what's happening in the Red Sea has been a vague one or hasn't been very clear-cut. In addition to the Russian position as well, unlike the Western position, which was very decisive when it came to the most recent strikes and interventions that were carried out by the US and UK coalition in an attempt to deter any further attacks in the Red Sea. Information also shows that China, along with Russia, asked to go to Sana'a to reach an agreement with the Houthis, but the government refused this, and an agreement was reached with the Houthis so that Chinese vessels would not be targeted in the Red Sea. Do you think that this position is sufficient, at least when compared to the major role that China should be playing, especially since, like you've said, China is the country that is probably the most harmed as the biggest exporter and as the biggest international shipper with trade with every part of the world. And so is this position, is China's response, do you think it is sufficient, or is it an attempt, or is it just to stand against the Western position on behalf of China and Russia in this issue? Thank you very much, Mohammed. We'll take other questions later, but back to you, Your Excellency.
As for China's position on the Red Sea, I think it is very clear-cut. It's not ambiguous. And I think we can put it into 4 points. The first is that any attacks on the commercial ships in the Red Sea should be stopped. And the second is that the international community should safeguard the safety of the Red Sea. And we believe that the various parties should play their important role in this regard. And the third point is that we believe the Red Sea issue is closely related to the Gaza conflict, and efforts should be made to put an immediate stop to the Gaza conflict so that it will not spread over to the Red Sea. And the fourth point, we believe that the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Yemen and other countries in the Red Sea should be well protected. So these are the 4 points which are clearly stipulated by China on various occasions, including at the UN Security Council. So there's no any ambiguities against that. And we also made it clear that no country should abuse the UN Security Council resolutions as an excuse to use force. And we are against any escalations in the Red Sea. So these are a complete set of Chinese positions. As for the talks we had with the Houthis, as I mentioned, that we have been in touch with the various parties in Yemen, and we urge them to come back to the negotiation tables and to reach agreement as soon as possible and to implement the roadmap which are advocated by the United Nations. And it remains our good intention to see peace come back to Yemen at an early stage, so that the Yemeni people will not suffer another 9 years after the long civil war. As for the banking system, as I said at the very start of my presentation, that we very much welcome the agreements between the Houthis and the Yemeni legitimate government the day before yesterday. We believe that is a good way to stop economic wars and to pull people's attention and energy to bring back their attention to the economic development and the national reconstruction. On the Chinese side, we will do whatever we can to help the Yemeni side in their economic construction. So that's my brief answer to your questions, and we very much hope that Yemen's economic development can go smoothly. And we, on the Chinese side, within our capabilities, we will do whatever we can in that regard.
طيب اخذ سؤالين.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We'll take 2 questions from the Q&A box, and then we will go back to the participants who have raised their hand. There's a question on what is China's comments on the broad campaign of arrests against UN employees and local employees of civil society organizations recently in Sana'a. There was a broad campaign of arrests, and what is China's perspective on that? A second question is, the Houthis have been designated as a terrorist group by the United States, and there was some news that he might be designated as a foreign terrorist organization. We expect that this might happen if there's a new administration, the Trump administration, or even if the Democrats continue in office. What is China's perspective on this?
As for the detention of UN staff, from the very beginning, China made our position very clear. We called for the immediate and unconditional release of the UN staff members detained. We also echo the statement by the UN Secretary General in this regard, where he expressed his deep concern about it. Also, at yesterday's UN debate on Yemen, the Chinese ambassador to UN once again called for the release of the UN staff. As for the Houthi, we also believe that we have been urging the various parties to come to the negotiation tables and also called upon the Houthis to give up any military options. And we very much hope that the peace will come back to Yemen at the earliest date. As for whether an organization is a terrorist organization or not, the United Nations Security Council have specific provisions on this, and we follow the provisions of the United Nations. As for the United States, as for the election, etc., I think it is an internal matter for the Americans who they would like to select in the next elections, and we will respect this the choice of the American people.
شكرا لك.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We have 2 participants who have raised their hands. Tariq Al-Haddad, if you could ask your question, but please first introduce yourself and who you work for. Thank you very much. I would like to first thank Sana'a Center for this seminar, and I would also like to thank Your Excellency for being here with us. Tariq, if you could please tell us who you work with. I work for the Khabar News Agency in Yemen. Thank you very much, Tariq. Go ahead. Yes, we can hear you. Continue. Your Excellency, the American agenda in the Middle East, I think, is focused primarily on growing influence and interest. But I think there's a difference between what it says and what it does. There are differences from one area to another, in nature of the rhetoric and these activities or the behaviors not being the same. And so my question is, to how long will the U.S. continue to be the lone superpower, especially in the region, and to influence the outcomes of any developments there? And my final question is, I've seen an increased and growing Chinese role in the region, but it has not, and despite the fact that I think there is a need for additional actors from outside to become involved, could this lead to a clash between China and the United States, and what might cause that? Thank you very much,
you.
Tariq. If we could take an additional question, Your Excellency, from Nashwan. Just, sorry, one more question in this round, and then we'll come back to Your Excellency. Nashwan, please go ahead. My name is Nashwan Al-Uthmani from the Yemen Future news site. I wanted to ask about the relationship. What is the relationship between the attacks on the Red Sea and Gaza? If anyone elsewhere starts carrying out attacks and claims that it is due to Gaza, will China accept this as being the justification? Or does China want, with this increased tensions, is China representing the other side, or not the US supported side, which is more closer to Iran and its allies? Thank you very much. Over to Your Excellency.
Okay. As for the first question about the United States and China, as I said in my earlier remark, that we are not agreeing to any proposition that China is filling in the gap in the Middle East. Actually, China's good friendship with the Arab countries dates back for many, many centuries. Probably you know that our historical record said that even the Saba dynasty have already established relations with the Chinese dynasties more than 1,000 years ago. As for the Chinese role in the Middle East, we have advocated for peace and stability in the Middle East. As I mentioned, that I have been standing along with the Palestinians for many, many decades. And we have also advocated for reconciliation between the Saudis and the Iranians. Even on the Yemeni issue, we have, over the past 68 years since China established diplomatic relations with Yemen, advocated for peace, stability, and development in Yemen. Whatever the developments in Yemen, we stand firm with the Yemen side to advocate and to safeguard its sovereignty and territorial integrity. I wish to say that for the United States, it has its Middle East policy, and on the Chinese side, we have advocated for the Global Security Initiative, under which we advocated that for more dialogue instead of confrontations, more win-win instead of zero-sum games. So that might explain a little bit difference between the two sides. And we always advocated for the national interest of the Yemeni people as well as the other countries in the Arab world. As for the second question about the Gaza issue and the Red Sea issue, we believe that the Red Sea attacks is a spillover from the Gaza conflicts. And we very much hope that the peace and stability will come back to Gaza at an early stage. So far, it has led to huge casualties and the destruction of buildings and infrastructure, and it's caused humanitarian disasters to the Palestinian people. And we advocated for the immediate stop, and we call for a major international meeting where more countries should be participating. And we also call for the reconciliation among the various factions in Palestine so that they can unite with each other and to implement the two-state solution.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for these answers. Like I said, anyone who has any questions, you could raise your hand or pose your question in the Q&A box. I had a question myself, if you'll allow me, Your Excellency. And it is, what is your calculus or what is your position if the crisis and the conflict in the Middle East expands? What is the scenario that China expects to occur and what will be its role? Our concern or our fear because of the Israeli strike in Yemen, also the situation in southern Lebanon and the situation in Iran, and also if a Trump administration comes into power, maybe the right wing in Israel will feel like they have more room to expand and escalate. So what is China's perspective on the scenario and what will be its response to it?
Actually, the Middle East issue is now already expanding. For instance, as you mentioned and other speakers mentioned just now, that the attacks on the Middle East, attacks on the Red Sea in particular, is having a global impact. In the past, not many people back in my hometown know about the Houthis or about where Yemen is. But since the attacks began, they have been calling me or emailing me asking what are the real situation. So it has a global impact, and we very much hope that the peace will come back to the Middle East, especially the attacks in the Red Sea can stop so that normal shipping and maritime transportations can be resumed at the early stage. To cite your example, since the attacks, the freight rate as well as the insurance cost for the Chinese-made toys, clothing, shoe products has more than doubled, and it has created huge burdens to the Chinese producers as well as the consumers. And we believe that it is high time for the various parties to put an end to the conflict in the Middle East. And we very much hope that the various parties, especially the major powers, regional powers, which have bearings upon the conflicts, should work together to reach the peace and stability. As for the impact of the United States, which you mentioned, of course, we are closely following the latest developments in the United States, and we want to know what will be the foreign policy of the next president on the Middle East. And we very much hope that whoever is in power, they will stick to the United Nations resolutions, support the two-state solution to the Palestinian issue, and to stand for peace in the Middle East. And also we hope that this will further create a good atmosphere for the Yemeni people and Middle East Arab countries to enjoy prosperity and also to catch the latest economic and scientific development, and we are ready to support them through the China's Belt and Road Initiative or Global Development Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We have around 10 minutes left in our discussion. We'll open for a final round. I apologize for taking so much of your time, Your Excellency. We have a round of direct questions. If you could please start by introducing yourself. A question from Saleh. Go over to you, Saleh.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you, Your Excellency, for your time and participation. I would like to thank all of the other participants. My direct question to Your Excellency is the Belt and Road Initiative. Has the strategy for has it avoided Yemen? Has it gone through a different road, or does it include Yemen? Because we know that, and I think that we know that China has had a very long relationship, and like you said, has been a long-standing friend of Yemen. And the Belt and Road Initiative or the Silk Road went through Yemen. And so has the Belt and Road Initiative diverted from that? Has it gone through other areas other than Yemen? And my second question is, could it be possible that in the near term, could China intervene between the belligerents in Yemen to reach a solution? I think the Chinese role in the region has been understated until now, but does China have a strategy to intervene directly as a mediator between the warring actors in Yemen in order to help improve the situation, also to provide support in the economy and development so that we can see more of these projects on the ground in reality? Thank you very much, Saleh. Your Excellency, if we could take two additional questions because this is the final round. Turan Al-Haddad, over to you.
ممكن تفتحوا بالتوران.
Turan, if you could please unmute yourself.
أهلا جميعا.
Hello, everyone. My name is Turan Al-Haddad. I am a researcher focused primarily on political affairs. Your Excellency, my question is, the conflict in Yemen can developments can come very quickly, and I think we've seen that. The government took the option. I'm sorry, the connection is not so good. As in, I'm sorry, the question was not very clear, Turan. There was a problem with your connection. If you could write it in the question and answer box, and we'll come back to it. Our final question will be with Muhammad Al-Sami'i. Over to you. If you could please introduce yourself. Tariq, I'm sorry, but we've already taken a question from you. So, Muhammad? Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Majid. I would like to thank Sana'a Center. I would also like to thank His Excellency for being here. Very briefly, Yemenis have been patiently awaiting a peace, and they want it sooner rather than later. Does China expect that a settlement or an agreement could be reached anytime soon, based on the role that China plays and also based on its contact with all of the actors? What is your expectations? This was the final round, Your Excellency. Over to you.
Okay, there are quite a few questions. I will be simple. As for China's Belt and Road Initiative, actually it has brought benefits for many countries, and I believe that Yemen is no exception. It will be high on our agenda. We have already so far attracted about $1 trillion of investment in the BRI projects since we kickstart 10 years ago. And so far, we have built more than 3,000 different projects in many countries. And we very much hope that the peace will come back to Yemen so that Chinese investors, business people, bankers can come back to Yemen to help the national reconstruction in Yemen. Recently, I visited Aden and Hadramaut, and we can see the well-capable Yemeni entrepreneurs, and they are very eager to have further exchanges and cooperation with China. And we are happy to work with them to facilitate their economic constructions and to facilitate their exports to China. At the moment, our bilateral trade stands at about $3 billion. Compared with the other Arab countries, it is about 1% of China's trade with the Arab countries. But with the size, resources of Yemen, I believe that Yemen should have a bigger say in the bilateral trade, and it should maybe double or even triple it if the conditions are ripe. And at the moment, there are about 30,000 Yemeni business people and other people working or studying in China. And we very much hope that they will also contribute to the BRI projects between the two countries. As for the peace between the various parties, I very much hope that they can put aside their differences to make the national interest of the people as the most important thing so that they can come to the tables and reach the roadmap for economic construction and to political settlement. As for the time, I very much hope that it will not take another 9 years for us to wait for peace in Yemen. We should seize the time and seize the moment, and we hope that it can come at an early date. And I very much hope that the Sana Center can make your wise contributions and recommendations to achieve the peace in Yemen. And on the side of the Chinese government and Chinese embassy, we will do whatever we can to promote peace and reconciliation among the different parties. And we will work at the regional level and the multilateral level so that we can create a good atmosphere for Yemen's peace process. Yesterday, I talked with the UN coordinator for Yemen, and we also discussed how to provide more humanitarian assistance to Yemen. Recently, China provided another $1 million of grain support to Yemen, and we will provide more other supports as far as our capabilities allow us. And here, I would like to reiterate our strong support for the Yemeni government, and we very much hope that peace will come back and the Middle East will enjoy peace and stability at the earliest date. Thank you.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your discussion. This was very valuable. It was a very rich, fruitful, and very interesting discussion. I wanted to give you some time if you had any concluding remarks that you wanted to say at the tail end of our meeting.
Oh, yeah. In conclusion, I just want to reiterate our strong support to the Yemeni people. And as I mentioned earlier on, that China's friendship with Yemen dates more than 1,000 years. As many Yemeni friends said, that our friendship is deeper than the Red Sea and higher than the Mount Everest. As the Chargé d'Affaires of the Chinese Embassy, I'm ready to work with the Sana Center, with all your members, as well as the media, to further promote our friendship. And we are ready to continue to let people know what's happening in China, about China's major initiatives like the Belt and Road initiatives, as well as China's reform and opening up. And we are happy to become good friends, good partners in the way ahead to peace.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thanks again for your time. Thank you for your very positive engagement. We at the Sana'a Center are always very happy in our contact and engagement with you. I would also like to thank our participants in the audience. I would like to thank all of the journalists and researchers who were here with us today, who have taken time to be here at this very exciting and very informative discussion with His Excellency Ambassador Shao Zheng. Thank you very much for your time, and goodbye. Goodbye, Your Excellency. Goodbye, everyone. And for anyone who has missed parts of this discussion, like I said, it was recorded. It will be shared on social media in both English and Arabic. Thank you all very much. Thanks once again, Your Excellency.
Shukran. See you again. Bye-bye.
Bye.